Muito boa tarde, Dr. Tiago Piticunha, caro Zacarias da Costa, Secretário Executivo da CPLP, Sr. Embaixador, Srs. Participantes, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to deliver the closing remarks on this event on the Earth system as a common heritage of humankind. More importantly, I would like to thank them for organizing this conference and for reminding us that we have a grave responsibility to continue the legacy which has been left to us by the work of Professor Will Steffen. UN Secretary General António Guterres has provided us with absolute clarity when he warns us about the existential threat posed by the triple planetary crisis: climate change, loss of biodiversity, and pollution. And as he has told us, humanity is waging war on nature. This is a war that we are certain to lose. The effects of climate change in the Earth system are already upon us. We have extreme weather events such as droughts and floods. They have grown in frequency and intensity. We are seeing the increase of average temperature all over the planet. We are seeing rising sea levels. We are seeing loss of biodiversity. And all of this has been detected and forecast many years ago, but the reality is much worse than was imagined then, because we are also seeing an acceleration of planetary imbalances. 15 or 20 years ago, we were told that climate change, loss of biodiversity, would be a big problem in the future. It would be a problem for our grandchildren. Now, we see that the consequences are already upon us. And this is the case in many parts of the world, and Portugal is no exception. It is extremely appropriate and timely to recall at this moment the pioneering work of Professor Steffen in Earth systems and climate science. On the one hand, breaking down silos between oceanography, ecology, and biology, and on the other hand, advocating strongly for placing science at the center of climate action and policies. It is disappointing that each year in the UNFCCC COPs, the Conferences of the Parties, we still haggle over the phraseology regarding science-based decisions. But that only goes to show how important it is to keep on insisting on this point. His work and influence have been given due recognition by Portugal, namely in our climate law of 2021, which includes an important reference to a stable climate as a common heritage of humankind, and we are proud to have been pioneers in this respect. We now face the challenge of generalizing internationally the understanding that a stable climate is part of the common heritage of humankind. The basic principles behind the notion of common heritage of humankind, which are international public utility, the interests of future generations, the obligation to cooperate, these make it very clear that Earth system, and particularly stable climate, fit into this concept. But it is nevertheless challenging to get this accepted. Governments and civil society, especially academia, need now to combine their efforts and to carry the message forward, walking together on the path needed for international recognition. As we chart our route forward, we should learn from our failures in the past. In recent years, the lack of consensus to launch a global pact for the environment has shown that these initiatives need to be supported by a strong outreach, by the willingness to hear and to take on board concerns and reservations, and by the readiness to keep the conversation going as long as necessary in order to persuade, to mobilize, and to change the narrative. This important debate should be understood within the broader multilateral framework that sets the course for our common future, namely the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which is understood as an action plan for people, planet, and prosperity. In this sense, success cannot and should not be thought of in terms of the individual goals. On the contrary, the individual goals have to be understood as contributions to the balance and stability of our Earth system, including, of course, the biosphere where we as people live. Having said that, we have to focus our specific policies on individual parts of our global responsibilities, and the SDGs promote this task. In our case, Portugal has been a pioneer in some of the environment-related goals, being actively engaged in climate action, so SDG 13, investing in clean energy, SDG 7, and in the protection of biodiversity, both on land and marine systems, SDGs 14 and 15. Back in 2016, Portugal declared its ambition to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, which was a pioneering declaration at the time. During the recent climate change conference at COP28, we assumed the goal of anticipating this target to 2045. At present, over 60% of our energy mix for electricity comes from renewable energies, and we aim to achieve 80% by 2026. We've played an active role in the negotiation of the BBNJ agreement to ensure the protection of biodiversity beyond national jurisdictions. And we have created the largest marine protected area of the North Atlantic, with full protection around the Ilhas Selvagens in Madeira. Moreover, it is also noteworthy the active role of Portugal as a strong advocate for ambitious, effective ocean action as an indispensable component of the fight against climate change, and by placing the blue economy at the center of sustainable development strategies, recognizing and valuing marine natural capital as a tool for environmental action and sustainable environmental growth, sustainable economic growth. Allow me to, on this point, take the opportunity to thank Oceano Azul Foundation, our hosts for this event, for its permanent and determined activism in promoting the health of the ocean. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we are very proud to be a partner of Oceano Azul. We are also involved in growing efforts in other contexts, and Executive Secretary of CPLP, Zacarias da Costa, has mentioned the Declaration of Lubango, which was adopted by the 9th meeting of the Ministers for Environment of the CPLP in April 2023, that recognize a climate emergency and the need for combined efforts. I would also like to acknowledge the important and dynamic role that has been played by the Common Home of Humanity Association since 2016. The recent side event at COP28 in the Portuguese Pavilion in Dubai and the exchanges with Brazilian authorities and academia are a good example of the way to create synergies. But finally, and more broadly, in honor of Professor Steffen, I want to reiterate the crucial role of science. Science, scientists, and science-based policy. If humanity wants to have a fighting chance of reverting the course that has led us to where we find ourselves today, we must be based on science. The time is now. Informed by the best available science, policymakers need to come together worldwide and agree in the best spirit of multilateralism to take decisive action to address climate change over this next decade, including the necessary changes to our common legal and political framework. And that is why this conference today is so important. Thank you.